What's going on, guys? It's going to be our Summary Markets week 93. As always, we're going to talk about SPY, Qs, gold, oil, USD, JPY, and then get into Bitcoin and Ethereum. Once we're done with that, we're going to get into our stock and options watch list. So let's get started. So starting off with SPY, you did break out of that 466, 467 target range, and you tried to push higher, but it's kind of putting in a little bit of a flat top up here. So right around 470, 471, you're seeing kind of a flat top. Looks almost like a ascending triangle. So I'd say as long as you can hold on to this little short-term trend, you should be able to push up into like 473, 475. But it was a lot of weakness on Friday. You saw a kind of a weakness on Thursday, but then you bounced towards the end of the day and you had that nice close. But then on Friday, you just weren't able to break above that 471. You tried to go higher, sold off, giving you a little bit of an inverted hammer. You can see the momentum is completely shot too. There's like no momentum on the buy side. So the longer that it stays below like 471, the worse it is here. And if you lose this trend, it's probably going to pull back to at least 465, maybe 462. Now, we don't have any local gaps to target until we get all the way back down to, what is that, like 450, 447. So there's no easy targets there, but you could target like 462 and then around 458 if we do see a little correction here. It wouldn't be typical because this time of year, towards late November, early December, it's usually up only. For the rest of the year, you pretty much only see breakouts. You see what they call Santa Claus rally. So if we got a strong correction here down to 460, it definitely would not be historically typical. So if you do break above 471, look for that 475. Then obviously we're looking for like 483 later down the line. Qs is a little different here. You had that same kind of correction, but then we were able to break the high on Qs. So the main level on Qs around 400, that was taken pretty easily. You had a nice little break on Thursday, continuation on Friday. Same thing on the momentum though, really low momentum. We don't see a whole lot of buy pressure. We do have a small gap at, let's see, around 401, 402. So that would be an obvious target if we do pull back on Monday, Tuesday. Get below like 400 again, probably go back down to like 397. And if we were looking for like a short-term breakout target, we could take this impulse that we saw on, what is that, Thursday? You could even extend it if you wanted to go a little further out. But if we take the short-term one here, let's see what it gives us. We're looking for 407 and 409. And then if you extend it, 409 and then 413. So relatively the same levels. That is about where I target as well, kind of around that 408 to 410 area if we do see a breakout. But like I said, if you see that correction, look for around 397, maybe 390. Moving on to gold, you saw a nice little breakout, not last week, but the week before. And then last week, you pretty much just consolidated along that 1861 target. Now, if you break above that, above like 1880, you're looking for around 1900, 1920. But if we do get below, I'd say there's actually a lot of support here. So even if you do pull back, you can see the range high right here is a lot of support. So if we do get below 1830, I'd probably target around 1814, 1800, somewhere around that previous high. You do have a lot of support kind of lining up around that 1800. You have the pivot, the 200 EMA. You have a monthly VWAP there as well. So 1800 would be the major support, but anything above like 1830 would be pretty bullish, to be honest. And then next target, obviously, like I said, 1900 and 1920. Still seeing a correction on oil. Like I said last week, we were getting some talks with Biden and OPEC. He's trying to get them to increase the supply. Obviously, he has no control over OPEC. It's not like America completely controls that industry. But if they do start to push up their supply, then oil should come down a little bit. Maybe come down to 72, 70. A lot of support around there. The uptrend has been broken. So the next levels we want to keep an eye on. You can kind of keep an eye on this little downtrend here. It's almost forming somewhat of a wedge, but there's not really a whole lot of price action to really gauge that wedge on. But if you do break back above the 50, back above like 79, you should be looking for around 82 and then 84. USD JPY tried to break out of the pennant, which it did. So you had that bounce off the lower level, bounced up, broke the lower pivot, or sorry, the lower wedge. And now we are trying to break this trend right here, where we had the high here and the high here. And then you can even take the high there as well. But ended up giving you a fake out. So a little bit of a fake out back below that trend. If you do get below the trail, you have a VWAP and the 50-day right around 113. Break 113. Look for that pivot around 111. Actually, 112 would be more accurate. Hold above this trend, you're looking for 115 to 116. Right now, the dollar is kind of consolidating. Okay, for Bitcoin and Ethereum, let's move on to our other chart actually. So Bitcoin actually gave us a very strong retest of that previous POC. We had that POC around 55.8. You can see I've extended the line right here. And that's pretty much the bottom, almost exactly. So if you guys were paying attention to my summary of markets and you marked out that level on your chart, hopefully some of you guys were able to get a little bid there or fill some bids. But for right now, I wouldn't say you're bullish. You are bouncing, but you're not really in a bullish uptrend. You're not really seeing the buyers in complete control. The bounce is definitely short-term bullish. Long-term just not really there. So we have that bounce off 55.8. We have a pivot coming in, but we do not have the reclaim of the resistance levels. We do not have the flip of the trail. So there is a lot of work to be done here for Bitcoin to be bullish. Now, I do like the bottom warning on the Momo. I do like the pivot. The problem with the pivot is you'll sometimes see like failure, pivot, or then you bounce and then you fail downward, pivot, bounce. So it puts in kind of like a stair-stepping pattern. So we have to be very careful. If this fails this pivot, it will most likely be doing that, putting in kind of that stair-stepping pattern downward. Now, for now, if we hold above this pivot, your main resistance is around 62.5, and then there's a little bit around 63, 63.3 to be exact. Break above that pivot. You do have a little bit of resistance from the previous highs here, but I think once you reclaim that level for the third time, it should be enough to push you higher. So look for around 63.5, 63.6. Then the next target would be around 66,000. Get above 66, we're still looking for 72. If it fails this 558, you want to watch that anchored VWAP and the pivot around 527. Moving on to Ethereum. Same thing with Ethereum, flipping the OTS, putting in the pivot. Could be a stair-stepping pivot. The Momo is not signaling a bottom like you are on Bitcoin, so not as strong of a bottom that we saw on Bitcoin. What I do like is you have a double pivot here now. So we have the pivot from the old high, and now we have the new pivot from the low. But if we do break those pivots, obviously, could be a stair-stepping pattern downward, and you would be looking for around 3,500 to 3,200 on the 200 EMA. If we flip the OTS, you're looking for the previous high around 48, and then we're still looking for around 5,000 as that secondary target zone. All right, that is the summary markets. Let's move on to the watch list. The watch list is going to be pretty small this week. There's not really a whole lot of things that I'm watching. For the most part, my bags are packed. I've got a pretty big amount of holdings in my long-term portfolio. We built up, I think, around 8 to 10 positions that we're currently in. So we're in a hefty amount of positions. I'm not really looking to enter in any more in the short term, but there are a few things that we're still watching. We're still keeping an eye on overstock. We did hit our first target around 110. Still looking for that target around 125. Any pullback to the triangle would be fairly bullish around 88. Airbnb, you're hitting our short-term targets around 200. If this pullback holds up, you're looking for around 210 to 220. Keep an eye on that. A lot of these we're not really watching anymore. Snow, you finally hit our final target around 393. If you can stay above this pivot, you want to look for around 405 and then 429 as the all-time high. Shopify hitting our targets. If you can stay above 1740, look for 1840, 1880. Uber, we're still keeping an eye on. I actually have this, I think, on my other chart. Let's see. Yeah, Uber, we're still watching with the anchored VWAPs. If you can get above the anchored VWAP around 49.50, we definitely could start a nice little uptrend into 60. But for now, we're still kind of stuck between those VWAPs. AMD, we're still keeping an eye on. It's been doing very well. Let's see. We have another target at 160 and then 165. We do have a little bit of a gap at 152, so we pull back to that level. That could be a support as long as we hold above the gap. Break below 150, look for 146 to 141. Couple of my holdings here. Coupang failed our $30 target. We collected our premium. We're looking to sell more premium, but we have not sold just yet. If this does continue to fall, we might add on to our shares in order to sell more premium, but I haven't decided just yet. This is looking a little weak. Honestly, in hindsight, I was kind of wishing that I sold all of my shares at 30 instead of just letting go of the premium. We could have taken max profit, but it is what it is. We're probably going to sell some more premium to make up for the little loss in share value, but right now we have not been filled on that. Wolf, we added onto our shares on that pullback, a little bit underwater on those. Meta, we sold $18 calls when it hit our $17 target, so we are already in profit on those. Actually, we're up like 20% on those calls that we sold. And if it starts to pull back, we might just end up closing all of our shares for a nice little gain because we are in these shares from like $15. I added to my PayPal shares as well. PayPal and Wolf are my two only positions that we are currently taking a small loss on. But both of those positions I'm happy to hold on to for another quarter, maybe another 2 quarters. So short-term loss on those is not a big deal. But if PayPal gets back down to 170, I'm probably going to add more shares. We might even start selling some premium on PayPal as well. UUP, this was our dollar hedge that we've had since March. We've actually built this position up to more than a hedge. It's actually a pretty strong position at this point, and we're up 50% on these contracts because the dollar has been doing so well. We're looking for a $26 target. It's at $25.75, so we're almost there. If it can get to 26 or 26 and a quarter, I'm probably going to start to ease out of that position and take our profit. If it gets to that point, we'll probably be up about 100% or more on our contracts. So hopefully we can do that within the next few weeks. All right, last but not least, let's look at some big tech. So Microsoft breaking the trigger point at 341. Next target would be 350 and then 353. If you get below 338, look for around 330. PayPal smashed all of our targets. We had a 150 target, 153, and then I think it was 158. All those targets were hit. Our extended targets, let's actually go ahead and grab some. All right, you're actually hitting one of our targets here at 160. Next one would be 162.50 and then 168. Facebook still putting in the right shoulder. Typically, when you're putting in the right shoulder, it's going to be very choppy, which it currently is. If you can hold above 345, look for 357 and then 364. So far, the inverse is still pretty clean. Netflix hit our target at 701. Next target would be around 720 and then 757. If you break below the trend, below like 650, I'd say, look for 643 and then 630. Amazon hit all of our targets short term. The next target that we have, or the main target is 4,000, but short term, I'd look for 3,800 and then probably somewhere around 3,850. But our main target for the next like 2 quarters is around 4,000. Tesla, did you hit our target? You just barely missed it. We had a target around 1142. You missed it by like 4 points. So that would be the short-term target. Obviously, it's basically already hit, so we would extend that to around probably 1173, and then you have a gap at 1220. Okay. If you break below the low of Friday around 1093, look for the pivot around 1040, and then you have that gap at 910. Okay. All right, guys, that was the summary markets and our weekly watch list. Make sure to hit that like button if you guys like the content. And we'll see you guys tomorrow in Discord at 9:30 in the morning. Or if you're on our live stream, I'll see you guys at 3 p.m. Eastern. Peace out.